So just recently, I was watching this video from Casey Simpson, which in case you guys don't know, he's a former childhood actor who was on Nicky Ricky, Dickie and Don. I'm not sure which one he was. I never really watched that show growing up. But I've been really fascinated by his videos lately because he collects different clips, different videos from the internet, and he puts them in a way that kind of shows what people are thinking in that world, right? In that internet world of TikTok. And I think this really interesting because for a long time now, I really didn't like the idea of getting my information and my opinions from sources like that because I feel like they were so skewed for the sake of, popularity, for getting attention online. And I think that still is true, but I think it's also a good way to really know what people think, what people are really genuinely thinking. In the same way that I'm putting this video out now in my own format, other people want to share their thoughts and opinions. He kind of cherry picks videos, getting from like different sides, different perspectives. I've always watched videos that were, 20, 30 minutes long, talking about a specific subject with high quality editing, visuals, explaining, using sources, listing all their sources out, doing an in-depth analysis. But his videos are really cool because it feels like a sort of hype man or someone coming into a crowd of people to be like, hey, check this out, the news scoop. Kind of like the newspaper boy standing in the corner shouting about like, extra, extra, read all about it, something along the lines of that, right? That's kind of how we see his videos. He makes a lot of videos about education in the United States, particularly with Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Millennials, makes a lot of videos about that. I don't know if he's really made videos about Gen X or Boomers, which these titles themselves that we associate with them, Gen X, Boomers, Gen Z, Millennials, I think is really fascinating, and I could talk about that in another video. But for this one, I wanted to make a particular point based on something that he addresses in the video I just watched. So I just watched the video Reading is Over from Casey Simpson. And in the video, he talks about particularly the reading crisis that children have been facing in schools. And I kind of want to lead it into this bigger picture. So I think that the reading crisis in particular, to start the conversation, really begins at home and the way that we interact with reading. We all know that fonts, particularly handwriting styles, have changed a lot over time, right? We used to write cursive because we wrote by hand. And I think in a lot of ways, cursive is still better to write with by hand. Obviously, you can debate that all you want, but I think that when you're writing by hand, it just makes more sense to have each letter connected in a smooth flowing fashion, especially if you're writing a lot. In fact, I wonder if there's been studies about people's hands getting tired of using standard versus cursive writing. But when we switched to a digital format, everything had to be standardized. Instead of making it easier for writing, we're making it easier to read. And I think in that way, it makes a lot of sense why children aren't as good with reading anymore. No longer are we writing and reading, but also the way that we consume media doesn't really have room for written material. Like obviously we read books in school, but we don't engage with them the same way that we do, or to the same extent that we do with visual mediums, like YouTube videos, movies, TikToks, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I was a pretty bad speller. In fact, I am still a pretty bad speller. I remember when I was in junior high, I started keeping a Google Doc of different words that I would hear. People would say, I don't know, soliloquy or presumptuous. I remember getting that from Stranger Things. 3 sheets to the wind. I got that from American Pie. Just different like expressions and words that I didn't know that I wrote down. It's every now and then take a look at it. And I realized that there were a lot of words and phrases I didn't know, but I was still able to understand. I was still able to connect with it. And I eventually went out of my way to understand at a deeper level and to understand what these unknown words are. And I still continue to do that to this day with some words because, English is a messy language. But going back to the focus on school and the education system, I've noticed this pattern. So students come into school and they have this presence that says, I'm needy, pay attention to me, I'm not capable of doing anything. Students have short attention spans, they have more incapabilities. I mean, we've all seen examples of this, whether you have siblings that are younger, whether you are a teacher in school, or maybe you are the young one in school and you look at your peers and you think like, wow, these guys do not know, basic reading, writing. And a lot of this does go back to the parents. I think that parents have caused a lot of problems, but it's not necessarily their fault either. Now, I think that they are more to blame because they're older. They have more consideration. There's more thought that they can put into it. Obviously, a child cannot determine what their childhood is, right? But when you're an adult, you have to make these decisions. However, a lot of parents have also been pushed to have to make those easier decisions. It's like the whole train, the whole line of thought. So I think that parents are maybe not the entire root of the problem, right? And I'll touch a little bit on that. But I think that right now they're in the position to be the change. That you can't necessarily think about who caused the parents to be at fault, who caused that thing to cause the parents to be in fault, to cause the children to not be performing as well in school. But it's really up to the parents to make these big changes. And so parents are not teaching their kids like they used to. And this is causing children to come to school to make the teachers stressed out, to make the teachers, less patient with the students. And then this also causes the students to lack in their education. It's a terrible cycle, really, because the students make the teachers tired, the teacher gets tired, and then the teacher makes the students more tired and frustrated. So it's a terrible cycle.
What's going on? I'm done. Cut the show. I'm done. Take me off.
And I've been working in education for a little bit, and so I went through school with the mindset that school sucks. I don't like school. I don't want to be here. And I had that mentality for a while. It wasn't until my junior year of high school when I started learning Spanish, when I finally was able to connect with a subject, right? Because all throughout school, you always see these subjects as like these sort of entities that exist separate from your own life. And this is something I still see a lot of children thinking, right? They say, I hate reading, I hate math. I will trick students into doing math despite them saying how much they hate math and they do not want to do it. But then I find out they're actually not that bad at math. They just have this terrible idea. They want to engage with something, so if they have to do, mental operations to engage with it, they will, gladly. But when you add a title to it, when you add a structure to it, and you want to teach them that specific mental function, that specific, thing that they're doing unknowingly, now all of a sudden they don't like it. And it's because of that idea they have around school, around math, reading, writing, around all these subjects, that I believe causes them to not want to engage with it. I remember my little brother, for a long time we thought he can't read. He's struggling to read. But then I saw him playing Plants vs. Zombies, and he was just fine reading the dialogue from Crazy Dave. And I was like, wait a minute, he actually can read. And it's just because he didn't like the books that he got. He liked reading the dialogue. He liked understanding the story when he played a game. But even then, you don't really see that much, right? Like, I can't remember the last time I've heard a child say that they played a story game. Like, I don't hear children say, oh my gosh, do Undertale? I love playing that game. Or Deltarune, dude, the dialogue is so good. A lot of games that children play today are more action-based, more hype-focused. And so I think that's also kind of caused children to do less reading over time. But in order for children to really connect with a subject, I think it'd be much more interesting for children to be able to bridge that gap between this is a terrible subject, I don't like it, and this is what I actually used in my life. Like, for example, for me, when I was learning Spanish in high school, I was like, this is just a boring subject. I guess that sounds cool, but like, I don't really care about it. It wasn't until I got into the pandemic and was like, you know what? I kind of want to do something. Let me just learn some Spanish, right? I'm going to lock in. I'm going to really focus on Spanish. And I did. And it wasn't until I started to actually talk to people, when I actually made that bridge between the subject and the practicality of it, I was like, wow. There's a whole world of people I was able to talk to through Spanish. I found a love for linguistics, for language in general. And that's something I wouldn't have been able to feel if I wasn't able to bridge the gap. Similarly, mathematics was really, really hard one for me to be able to bridge into my own life. And it wasn't really, I don't think, until college when I took a math and society course that I realized, like, wow, we have to use a lot of math for taxes, budgets, for financing. And I finally actually really got interested in math. I had liked the idea of parabolas and different shapes that you can make on a graph and that whole thing. My teacher in high school, my calculus teacher, had a really nice way of teaching that I really enjoyed. But it wasn't until I bridged the gap that I was finally interested. I think that if we're able to bridge that gap with students in reading, that it would make a big difference on the way that they approach books. I always tell students that come to me that if they don't like a book, find a story that they like. Don't focus on the book, right? It could be a movie. Maybe they like a movie and then they want to read the book adaptation for it. I think that it's more important to think about what you're engaging with and not how you engage it, right? Like, a student might hate using math. That's how they engage with it. But if they focus on using math in order to calculate how much damage the enemy Pokemon takes in a Pokemon trading card game, they're not going to be thinking about it as much, and they're going to be focused more on what they're using it on. I think that's a really important step in bridging this gap between students not being interested in the subject and not understanding the practicality. If students are able to not necessarily understand, but be able to be shown the practicality of the subject and how it's used, and not just be taught it, I think that they'll really make a big difference. This is something I wish I could have seen more in school. That's why I love field trips so much in school. We got to go on a handful of field trips throughout my time as a young student, and I always loved them, even though, sometimes I'd goof off with friends and stuff. I would still walk away from them like, wow, that farm is really cool. There's like a drone they use in that tractor. Those tires are huge. And those things kind of stuck with me. And even now I still think about those field trips, those few field trips I went on, whether it be to like a farm or a freaking bread factory, bakery. It's like an industrial sized France bakery. And that was really fascinating to me. Like I hardly understood any of it, but I was like, this is it. This is real. This is like what people are doing. This is what all these subjects are used for. And so I think that if students were able to bridge that, it would make a big, big difference. Anyway, I don't think I have anything else to talk about. I thought there were some more things I wanted to address, but I don't know if I'll actually edit and upload this or what. I've just been thinking for a while that I've been wanting to make videos like this where I just put my thoughts into a video format and share them with people online. So if you're watching this, hope you enjoyed it. I hope this gave you something to think about. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. And I'll try to do more videos like this. Not as a way to, keep a strict schedule or to make content, but like I said before, if I'm making these videos for myself, I want to tell myself to make more videos like this. I want to put my ideas into a video format so I can collect them, save them with the future, and perhaps may allow them to be seen by other people. So yeah. Anyway, if you watched the video, hope you liked it. Thank you and